Welcome to another episode of the Nashville Dads. This week we have on JB Anderson of the Soccer Dad Pod. We talk about growing up middle class and finding grit, how Nashville is changing, JB's career path, St. Louis soccer culture, and pretty much all things dad. Make sure to check out JB's podcast, Soccer Dad Pod, and we hope you enjoy the episode. JB, you're a St. Louis guy. How are you born and raised St. Louis? Like never left? Always been there?
Yeah, well, yes, technically, yes. From my early childhood homes, the Arch, if I was standing on the roof, I could see the Arch. But geography is a huge sticking point / claim to fame around here. I grew up on the Illinois side. So I was,
okay.
And immediately everybody that's not from St. Louis, they're like, "Oh, so you're from East St. Louis?"
So you're from East St. Louis, yeah.
Yeah, there's other cities. Granite City, Steel Town, a little north of East St. Louis.
Okay.
But realistically, it's 5-minute drive across the river and we're downtown. So, but you're a stepchild, especially as a kid of the late 70s, 80s growing up, not having a 314 area code. They're like, "Oh my God, you're a foreign creature." So it's, I can only imagine like people that grow up in Jersey that look at, the Manhattan skyline, but they're from Jersey. They're not from New York.
No.
So same thing.
I feel like it's also got to be if you're Kansas City, but you're Kansas and not Missouri. You're Kansas City, Kansas, Yeah,
that's a whole other rabbit hole, because we detest everything on that side of the state. So
I know.
It is what it is. It's Kansas. So they have Paul Rudd, and that's about it.
Yeah, in Sudeikis. They got Sudeikis also,
Yeah, that's I get it. Actually they can claim Ted Lasso.
They can claim Ted.
I'm certain we're going to talk a little soccer here, so I'll give them Ted Lasso. The hashtag soccer capital of America. Their greatest soccer export is a fictional character on Apple TV.
Yep.
So,
all right, I got at least one St. Louis related question for you. Ted Drew's frozen custard. Is it the best frozen custard ever?
It's hard to argue against that. You're beat down with things like that. Every city has a thing. Like, you take Cincinnati, right? Skyline chili. It's awful.
Hey, now but, I'm from around there. That's what I grew up on.
Like, what do they put in there? Like cocoa powder or something? Whatever the secret is.
It is.
Ted
and cinnamon.
Ted Drew's is. St. Louis has a few culinary claims to fame. Provel cheese is number one. Emo's the thin crust. Dave Portnoy famously was like, the year that we beat his beloved Bruins for the Stanley Cup.
Oh yeah.
He had a brain meltdown over our thin crust Provel cheese pizza. So that was a claim to fame. But that and toasted ravioli. Okay. Was another one that was an accident. There was a ravioli that fell in the fryer, as the folklore goes, and hence the toasted ravioli was born. And then everything's a mistake here because even like gooey butter cake was supposed to be some kind of a different type of cake, but somebody doubled the butter and cut the milk.
Yeah, and
the end result was gooey delicious.
Yeah.
So, but fair. Ted Drew's, to answer your question, Ted Drew's custard. I'm not a big sweets guy, but I go that route. It's still it's a 5-minute drive, and I'm a thumbs up on the custard.
Okay. I have a couple of friends from St. Louis. Being from Evansville, Belmont had a lot of people from St. Louis go there. And there's one time I was driving through town and a friend met up with me and my wife literally just to give us Ted Drew's on our way. He was like, "You're in St. Louis, you have to have Ted Drew's." So that's
did they turn it upside down to prove that it doesn't fall out of the cup?
They did not, because by the time they got to us, it started to melt a little bit. So he didn't really trust that it would happen if he did that.
No, well, it's really funny because it's like, I don't know if you guys have ever been to Wiener Circle up in Chicago, if you've ever gone to like a Cubs game or whatever, where they berate you, and that's kind of the shtick.
Yeah.
The Ted Drews shtick is they hand it out the window, they turn every cup upside down to prove that it doesn't fall out.
Yep.
Which is kind of dumb, but whatever.
Yeah. It's they do that at Dairy Queen also with their blizzards. It's not like I'm like, oh cool, now I trust you. Now I'll eat the ice cream. Like,
right.
Man.
Yeah, well, that's not custard. That's ice cream that's sticking in the cup. So, like, there's like some high fructose sticky shit.
That's true.
That one.
That's true.
Oh, pardon my French there.
You're good. You can curse. You're good, man.
All right, cool.
Custard in ice cream. I don't know.
I think it has something to do with milk versus egg versus cream. Beyond that, because again, not being a sweets fan, I'm more of the whiskey fan than dessert.
There you go.
Dessert to me is a block of ice and some form of liquor.
Dude, that was me.
So there's that.
What kind of whiskey?
Brown.
Which brown?
Brown, yeah. No.
Preferably from a bottle.
I hope.
And here's, this is where we go full circle. Again, growing up on the east side, that's not East St. Louis. I'll say this: Irish whiskey. I'll do most Irish whiskeys. So
Gotcha.
So, are you pretty excited for your son to go to Belmont then, so you can just naturally end up at the Jack Daniel's distillery? You'll casually drive the hour and a half to Lynchburg and be like, "Oh, how'd I end up here? I better go on a tour."
Well, so he's been he's in his sophomore year now.
Okay.
And in my previous life, working in and near music as well, I was in Nashville often.
Okay.
Gotcha.
And I think going down there, the whole, the vibe, the drinking vibe, especially when it comes to like whiskey or bourbon, as much as you think it's like, kind of this big billboard event or cultural, like it's embedded in it's really not in my experience. I think once you get outside of Nashville and you kind of get into a little bit more rural, or you're going down or heading into Kentucky, now that's different. Bourbon is definitely more of a mainstay. Nashville is music, pop. It's got what I would consider a growing culinary scene, in my experience. But I think Nashville, when it comes to that kind of stuff, it's kind of reacting to its influx, with so many people from LA in particular, and even New York to a degree, that are flooding in from the industry.
Yes.
The palates, in my experience, the last couple times, everybody wants tequila. So you don't think of like, you go to Nashville, I want a Miller Lite and a shot of whiskey. But you go hang out with somebody and they're like, oh, let's go to this tequila bar.
Yeah.
Well, it's just like, it doesn't roll off the tongue as much,
Well, about 10 years ago in Nashville, that wasn't a thing either, a tequila bar.
Yeah.
Right.
I read an article just the other day talking about how most local restaurants, or quite a lot of local restaurants, have been closing down or saying that they're going to close down, and it's because all these high-end restaurants that can afford these high rents and pay these people astronomical amount of money. So I almost feel like it's losing its vibe, its true character.
I totally agree. I think, over the last 5 to 7 years, East Nashville in particular was kind of laying claim to the trying to stay true to its roots. But, last few times I've been down and bounced across the river there to meet some friends, it's I lived in Chicago for 8 years, and I was there from 98 through whatever that math is, mid 2000s.
2006?
Right around 05, 06. Yeah. So I was, I experienced kind of the explosion, that Lincoln Park and Wrigleyville and Humboldt Park and all these areas, where, that grit element just slowly dissipates and gives way to people making a lot of goddamn money, and, and the restaurants kind of following suit. Nashville's there.
Yeah.
It's going through the same thing. So which is fine. It gives you way more choices, to go and experience and do. But if you really want to dig in and be maybe not seen or, quote, local, that's hard to do. That's hard to do in Nashville these days.
Were you just since we follow you on Instagram, were you just at 12 South Tap Room the other week?
Yeah. So with Keller, my son is at Belmont.
So right down the street.
Yeah, like literally half a mile his apartment. It's kind of one of those things where I get what 12 South is. I mean, it's really easy. You go, it's not quite blown up to the point where you can't find parking, which is really usually my litmus, going into an urban environment, especially when you have a car. Like, how hard is it to park and how much is it to park?
Mm-hmm.
Well, it's pretty goddamn easy down in that area still. So it's like, okay, we're not there, but just watching, the people and you just know it's coming. 12 South within 2-3 years, forget it. Parking is going to be $40 an hour.
Yep.
And
I'm seeing a lot more tourists in that area with the girls with the cowboy boots and everything like that. So it used to not be like that. That was
so you notice, the Instagram, we were down there and it's like, I don't want to sound cliche, but when you see the bachelorette parties really rolling up and down 12 South now, in full garb, in the mandatory jean short / white boot, uniform.
Yep.
You're like, okay, there goes the neighborhood.
Yep. Well, it's so funny because so I would have gone to Belmont from 2006 to 2010. And back then, you didn't walk from Belmont down 12 South. 12 South was nothing what it is today. I remember Sevier Park is a park at the end of 12 South. And you wouldn't walk to it. You would drive to Sevier. And now it's $1 million homes. What is it? Betty or Draper James, Reese Witherspoon's huge flagship fashion store is there now. And in my head, I'm still expecting to walk by 12 South Tap Room, Mafiosa's, and corner music and Forks Drum Closet. And now I walk by and I'm like, oh, those are only 2 of those are left. That's it. The rest of them are all gone.
Yeah. It's a shame because, I look at it through the lens of my son really, because for me, it's one of those things. I mean, obviously I'm middle-aged. I'm stable and I can go do what I want to do. Mm-hmm. So going to 12 South, it's like, I get irritated with humans, so I don't want to line. But the menu or the expense or the experience, it's I don't think about it. But knowing that my son is there, and these kids that are at Belmont and, and even the Vanderbilt kids that are not far away, and Lipscomb's just south of it, right?
Yep. That's right there.
I think about how are they really supposed to have a cultural, how can they embed into, a community that is growing so fast? My middle son always, jokes around and he's like, I wonder if Keller's going to go to Broadway this weekend. I'm like, Keller can't afford Broadway beers.
Not anymore, man. No.
He doesn't have that good of an ID, and he definitely definitely doesn't have the bank account to be able to go and do it.
Nope.
Because I think about the fun that we had as kids, running around and chasing down dollar bottles or whatever the deal was. And there was always grit involved. In Nashville, it has so many upsides, but I do think the grit has dissipated, and it's really, really hard to find. And that's why these kids it's house parties. They're in basements and backyards, and they're still going to find a way to party.
Yeah,
but they're not. The house that they're partying in, you could drop it anywhere in the country, and it's a house party. Mm-hmm. Has nothing to do with the community.
Yeah. You've got maybe Brown's Diner near Belmont, in which you could probably get into, listen to some live music, have a good time, and it wouldn't feel, you wouldn't expect to pay $20 for a burger, or something like that.
Well, and the other thing is in Nashville, I find it so goddamn funny. I walk in with my wife, and I would like to believe that we both look still pretty good for our ages, right?
Yeah.
But the fact that they're carding me, like I'm straight up salt and pepper. You look at my face, it's like, dude, that's not dye.
No.
You know, that's experience.
Hey, that's the new trend now, man.
You know, and it's like it just feels it's fine. I know why they do it. It keeps a lot of people safe and whatever, but it's just if I'm gonna go dumpster diving and try to have fun in a community or a city, you know, there's a lot of other cities that I think are kind of on the frontier of, you know, what's next or potentially what's next, that I think that I do have more fun in these days. Yeah. You know, Detroit, perfect example. You know, I travel all over the place with my kids with soccer and for work to a degree, but Detroit is this, you know, a renaissance. You know, 10, 20 years ago, it was every cliche in the book. But now it's like that gritty, edgy kind of, you know, 8 Mile vibe is back, and it's fun, you know. And there's a few cities like that, but you know, the economy of the booming cities of, you know, Chicago, even Denver, as you well know now. Chicago, Denver, Nashville, Austin. Austin's, you know, that's jumped the shark years ago.
Oh yeah, that's becoming more like LA.
Yeah. Yeah, well, you know, it's funny because, you know, I don't know how much you guys care or get into politics, but I look at Texas and I look at Tennessee in particular, and it's like all the cool kids, you know, right? All the influencers from LA and New York, they're all flooding to Austin, and they're flooding to Nashville for all the you know, state income tax free stuff, and you know, and in the meantime, the states are turning purple, and you know, everybody was like, "Why? You know, why is this happening?" Well, you guys, you just brought in industry. Welcome to industry.
So, I mean, I think it's always funny because I think even In-N-Out Burger just announced that, like, my favorite thing about Nashville is, like, In-N-Out was like, "Hey, we're going to make a headquarters in Nashville," and it's like, "No, you're not. You're in Franklin. You're in Williamson County. You're actually like 20 miles south of Nashville." But saying Nashville, people will understand what you're saying. But
I love when they, you know, we were in Franklin for the tournament this not this past weekend, but the 2 weekends or whatever. No, it was this past weekend.
Okay.
And I think about, like, everybody's excited. They're all like, "Hey, we're going to Nashville."
No, you're not.
You know, all these soccer moms are like, "Oh, we're going to go to Broadway." And I'm like, you guys have not, like, read the actual, the invite.
No.
We're in Franklin.
You're like 30 to 40 minutes south.
And they're like, "Well, that's not that far. That's like suburban St. Louis County." I'm like, "No, it's far.
It's far."
So,
it's far.
Is what it is.
I don't know about you, Devin, but when we put up our house for sale, Matt and Melissa were like, "You can sell, we don't care, as long as it's not Californians."
Really?
Yeah. That was one of their stipulations. Either Californians or developers. They're like, "We just get a good family in."
You know what's funny? Even being out here in Colorado, so in Nashville, I would see bumper stickers that said, "Don't California my Tennessee." In Colorado, I'm seeing bumper stickers that "Don't California my Colorado." So, like, California almost seems like this thing where it's like, you just don't say you're from there. You're like, "I'm from Arizona." Like, how do you, like, everyone collectively seems to be like, California, we need some space. Okay. We left you on that side of the country for a reason. Can you stay over there?
And it's so ridiculous because, I mean, like, California, what is it? The 7th largest GDP in the world, right?
It's
its own nation.
Yes.
And by the way, every single tech item we all consume ad nauseum came from them.
Yeah.
So it's like, and your movies and most of your music, you know, because we're not going to talk about Nashville pop, but you know, it's like,
hey, there's good Americana coming out of Nashville too. Okay.
Good. Yeah. Well, okay. With an 808.
That's right.
You know, it's it's so funny. Having traveled a lot, I find the hating or the shaming of regional travelers, you know, be it for cultural reasons or work or whatever. It's like, you guys are all kind of ridiculous because I mean, the digital environment has made, we have no walls anymore. We are all, I guarantee that my lifestyle is probably, if there's a Venn diagram, there's a sliver moon of difference between your lives and my life, in completely different time zones.
Yep.
And it's just we're consuming all the same stuff, so it doesn't really matter.
Yeah.
Anyway.
No, it's
that's
true.
That's the poli sci guy in me. So I warned you in the message.
You're good. Where'd you go to college at?
So I went to two schools as a soccer player coming out of high school. I was recruited and I went with a coach that I played NAIA at a small school out of Iowa called Mary Crest for 2 years. And then the coach that recruited me was an Olympic development coach, and he went to another club. And I didn't want to play for the new coach coming in, so I went back to Southern Illinois in Edwardsville here. They had a big program too, and I came back, played a little bit. I was getting ready to start the season, and I hit a wall, so I just finished school.
Okay.
SIUE is, again, it's on the bluff. The campus stares at the arch, but it's in Illinois, so nobody claims it. But it was got out of there quickly. Political science degree in economics, and did what every poli-sci econ graduate does. I moved to Chicago and became a bartender. So
I would have thought that, or you went to grad school. Those are the two options for you.
No. I was the Foreign Service exam and LSAT, and was preparing for all of it because I was going to go and be a super spy, and because as a kid growing up in the 80s, the Cold War was real. We watched it in real time, and I was enamored by that, and I wanted to go kill spies. That was my dream job. How am I going to do that?
Yeah.
And when I graduated, I had a girlfriend from the first school who was from Chicago, and she hit me up and she's like, "Hey, I'm here at Kitty O'Shea's, which is a super popular old school Irish pub that's right on Michigan Avenue in the Hilton Towers and in the South Loop." And she called me and was like, "Hey, we've got a position open as a bartender. We only hire Irish J1 visa, residents, but you sound like an idiot, and I think my boss would like you." So, and of course, I was like, "Yeah, let's do it."
That works.
So I went up there and literally got tanked and met the GM out at a pub and got the job. And it was funny.
Kitty O'Shea's?
Yeah, Kitty O'Shea's.
We had a Kitty O'Shea's in Lexington.
Oh, did you?
It was so much fun.
Yeah, Kitty O'Shea's is it's within the Irish community nationally, really globally.
Okay.
It's one of the most famous bars in the world due to its pipeline of Irish J1 immigrants that would come in and get visas and then end up staying. Because there's not, to this day, I guarantee if you go to 10 Irish pubs in the city of Chicago, North Side, anywhere you go, 9 of them will have staff that has flooded, out of Kitty O'Shea's.
Okay.
So it was independent. It was kind of like the first Fado, the Fados that are like the Planet Hollywood of Irish pubs. 365 music every day. Irish music every day, and St. Patrick's Day was just absolutely insane.
Yep.
There would be porters down in the basement that we had 2 towers of handles on each side of the bar. Each tower had 8 handles. We would put 7 of the handles would be converted to Guinness, and basically the porters down in the basement would just stand there and just switch kegs out, by the minute. And we just leave them wide open, just pour them, pre-pour, half pours, and then top them. And as fast as you could sell them, they'd be gone. And it was the highest grossing Hilton chain bar in the world.
Yeah.
And it was great. That's where I, having a degree, thinking I was going to go be some big, important person, working there for a year and a half, 2 years, I realized that, the real world is it's not out of the books that I was reading,
Mm-hmm.
because we were 2 blocks from the Board of Trade, and the South Loop in Chicago is the financial district. So we had a combination of hotel guests because it was 2,000 rooms and convention.
wow.
So it
Yeah.
was constant business leaders from every industry, throughout the year. But then there was the investment, the brokers and the traders would come in, and it was just a whole other world.
Mm-hmm.
And that's where I realized, I was intrigued by these guys that were just dropping fat amount of money on booze, because growing up in Granite City, like you buy a bucket of beer for $8, and I would watch my dad maybe buy a round of shots and then go home and explain to my mom why it was justified.
Yeah.
And then these guys are running up $2,000, $3,000, $4,000 tabs, and I'm like,
Yep.
I kind of want to do what they do.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
Yeah.
so that was it. I got into finance, and like everything else in this world, it's all about your Rolodex. And
Mm-hmm.
one of the guys that was a regular that he knew I had a degree. He knew that I was not that I was a citizen, and hooked me up with a job. And I went to work for Kemper Funds, which turned into Zurich Investments, and rest was history. That was the end of my bartending career. So, and I miss it to this day. I still miss
Yeah.
it.
Yeah. Now, I mean, I'm sure you have some pretty good stories, especially being on the South Loop. I'm sure there's some stuff you saw where you're like, oh, this was my day today. Like,
I mean, I was there for the last 2 Bulls titles.
Oh,
So,
man.
part of those parades in the Grant
Yeah.
Park, and, so Jordan would come into the hotel often. It was a ton of political figures would be there.
Man.
Yeah.
I served JFK Jr. like
Oh, okay.
a couple months before he died in his airplane crash.
Yeah.
Oh, man, yeah.
Harrison Ford was there. I mean, it was just
That's
one
cool.
of those. It was one of those hotels. It's like, the movie The Fugitive, right? Tommy Lee Jones was filmed there.
Yeah.
Home Alone 2, Lost in New York, filmed in Chicago. So it's just one of those iconic hotels, and it just was, I think all kids, and everybody talks about, well, you should do public service, or you should go do Peace Corps or whatever. I argue that every kid should go bartend for 1 year.
Yeah.
Like you want to learn people, you want to figure out, solve problems, go bartend.
Yeah.
Especially at that age.
Well, I mean, so Justin, whenever he graduated with his landscape architecture degree, the only real job he could find was at Bread and Company. And I feel like, Justin, you almost like whimsically talk about, well, it sucks you ended up there because, I mean, you couldn't get a job for what you studied. I feel like you still look fondly back on like your couple of years at Bread and Company, and like the friends you made there, the experiences and all that.
Yeah, it was. So I graduated from the University of Kentucky with
Boo.
Whatever, landscape architecture degree. So when I finally got a job with a landscape architecture firm, it was 2008, and it was October of 2008 or September, somewhere around there, and everything just went bust. Like, a lot of our clients were like the investors from Lehman Brothers. So like, as soon as I found that out, and my boss, he was like, well, we got to let you go. So I got let go. I think it was November of 2008. Nobody was hiring landscape architects. They were actually letting people go, just like a lot of other industries. And I would interview or try to interview, put in applications, and nobody would give me a chance. They're like, oh, you're overqualified. And I'm like, I need a job. But this one place called Bread and Company, it was a family owned like coffee / deli sandwich shop. They gave me a chance, and it was the craziest 2 years of my life being the assistant manager there, because we were right by Vandy and had tons of Vandy students, tons of drunk student, and it was wild.
But I do think bartending, food service jobs
Oh
do
yeah,
make you like, I don't want to say empathetic, but it makes you just more aware of how the world actually works.
Yeah.
Whereas like, yeah, if you just stay in school all the time, you're like, yeah, sure, here's theory. Go work a food service job. You'll understand how people
Yeah.
actually treat each other.
Yeah,
it's humbling too.
well, especially from a standpoint of now, this is the econ in me. You eat what you kill, and if you want to work hard, in tip industry, it was like, just move. Just if somebody's got a quarter of the drink left, or the pint is getting halfway, ask. Because if you need to pay bills, sell more beer. It was kind of that simple. And I learned that early, and it was one of those like aha moments where it really doesn't, in my opinion at this point, I don't care what you do. If you want to make more money, there's always a way to do it. And I think via bartending, for me, it was like, if I had a slow night, well, how do I make it a busy night? Or you just feed into the environment. And bartending is one of those things, service industry in general. Don't be the first one to get cut if it's a slow night and they're like, okay, who wants to go home? Keep your hand down.
Yeah.
Pick or encourage other people to leave. It's these little things. Hustle. It is absolutely the hustle. And especially in that environment, because if somebody likes your bar or your burger or whatever it is, right, they're going to come back. Now you're building a portfolio of clients, and that's a whole other lesson that you learn. Like, what do you do? Because especially as a bartender, because everybody loves the bartender, like, oh, they're going to comp me a drink, or and there's, to a degree, there's an art to it. Absolutely, every bartender steals. But do they steal with ROI in mind, or is it just purely self-interest?
Yeah.
There's a big difference between the two. They all
just
steal.
Curious.
Yeah, what are they stealing?
What are they stealing? Like liquor or?
Well, okay, so you walk in and you order 4 pints. I charge you for 4, but I only ring up 3. Right?
Okay. Yeah.
So yeah, everybody knows, everybody in the industry, they steal. Servers, waitresses, bartender. But at the end of the day, your gross sales, your ticket, your number that rang up drinks, if you got a $5,000 night behind the bar and there's 2 bartenders and yours is 1,000 and your buddy's was 4, well, you were stealing. It's not that hard to figure out. So
I mean, I'm glad, Justin, you also were like, oh, so they're just stealing blatantly out of the register. They're just like, okay, this 120 for the register, a 20 for me, 20 for the register.
The steal is the product.
Gotcha.
You're rolling it up, because then the other way is you're not ringing any of it up, but the guest is like, well, shit, I sat here, I drank 17 martinis. You charge me for 2. I'm gonna tip you the value of the other 15. I mean, that's stealing too. So, my criminal career ended after 2 years.
Yeah, or you just switched lanes. You went from, you're just trying to find a different criminal outlet besides bartending.
Yeah, so I got into stocks and bonds and trading. And
Speaking of the 2008 crisis.
Yeah, no. Well, so I was involved.
How did that work out?
I witnessed the .com bust front row. I've never seen anything like. It was the weirdest thing because I grew up in a very blue collar, low middle income community. And we were low to middle income family, and working around individuals that are on the same floor, maybe 20 feet away in their own offices, and they're ripping 2, 3, 4 million a year. And, these trades are just like, when Apple was first running and Amazon's first running and everybody's just printing money by the second, and the real funny thing is, my first year there, my salary was a grand total of $23,500.
Man,
I had made 88 grand bartending the previous year. I'm like, well, this is what the hell? And my wife, now girlfriend at the time, she's like, yes, but now you are an adult. I'm like, how is that being an adult? So, but anyway, watching it happen. And so I see this grand exuberance and the spending and the lifestyle. And then I watched it pop.
Yeah.
And fielding the calls and the clients, but watching your peers realize that literally in the span of, 48 hours, they erased 10 million, 20 million in savings and or portfolio.
Yeah.
And you just see the effect that kind of disaster wreaks on a person.
Yeah.
Like, okay, I don't want to do that either. There's something cool about being blue collar consistent.
Yeah.
And I spent about 7-8 years in finance. And towards the end of it, started buying properties kind of as a side hustle. And I never forgot seeing those faces. And that was the reason why I, once I had my first son, I left the industry because one, I didn't want to shave anymore and I didn't want to wear a suit. So I was like,
you had adulted for too long.
I'm like, that sucks,
It does.
and, but so I moved into real estate and renovating and just figuring it out, YouTube's popping off. And it's like, okay, how do I frame a bathroom wall? Well, I'll YouTube it. And, went that path. But the moral of the story for me was I never wanted to become those guys, and I never wanted to like have that face. Yeah. And so I diversified. Yeah. I literally started diversifying my whole lifestyle.
Yeah.
So,
I mean, I feel like, I grew up in Southern Indiana, blue collar also, Justin. I feel like you also probably grew up middle class also. Yeah. I do see people who are like, what I would consider extravagant, do like the massive trips and stuff like that. And I'm like, how do you sustain that lifestyle and be mentally present for any moment at all? Because the stress that it takes to be able to afford those things, like, I don't know if you have any mental availability whenever you're on the trip, like at all. And I'm like, well, I don't want to get to that level then, because I'm going to like that level of consumption is so great that I'm like, well, once you start eating at that level, how do you ever like put less on your plate? Basically, I don't know. I don't know how to. So I just try not to ever give myself the opportunity to do it to some extent,
Yeah, I think
as a kid, you were. At least I was very jealous of those friends that could go on those expensive vacations, because my vacation was going to see my grandma in Carthage, Missouri.
Yeah.
Oh, I know Carthage. I actually know exactly where that's at.
Yeah, my whole side of my mom's family is from Carthage, and either live in Carthage, Joplin, or Kansas City, and it's not the most fun place to go, especially as a kid. But yeah, I mean that was ours.
It's what you could afford. Yep.
Yeah. Yeah.
Well, and I think it's really important because I mean I lived that life cycle. We would go to Table Rock Lake, which is in southern Missouri, as kids, because again my mom was a beautician, and her salon was our laundry room, and my dad worked for a little 2-man shop as a dispatcher for owner operator truckers, and there was like 5 truckers, and they would just hustle steel loads and aluminum, and just kind of a really awful lifestyle. But they would take us to we were regionally limited because you couldn't afford a lot of gas, so you drew the circle as well. Okay, where can we go? And luckily, growing up where we grew up, the Ozarks 2-hour drive, or 3-hour drive. So we would go to Lazy Lee's Resort, and it's a typical ranch style hotel with outside doors, and they had a little fishing hut, and a really shitty green moldy pool, and
technically a pool.
But I think my parents, they're gone now, but I think back, like they found a way to make that place our Shangri-La, and it was and it was we got our own room as kids, and because the rooms are $20 a night back then.
Yeah.
So, and we were like, holy shit, we're adults. We got our own. So they found ways to like smoke and mirror us.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
And then, the lake is 7 million bluegill. So you just catch them one at a time. And, and then fast forwarding, when I think about travel and I think about, you were talking about disconnecting and, after my parents died in 2014, they died literally 5 months back to back. And I didn't have at the time a large extended family. And, my wife and I, after that, because Christmas was the big thing for my mom. That was the day that, she forgot birthdays. She forgot everything because she was a mother of 3 boys and was
gosh.
God, she just wanted to be left alone. But Christmas was her shtick. And when they were gone, that was gone. And my wife and I agreed, like, okay, we need to shift it up. We don't need shit. Our kids don't need toys, because we had just had our own third at that time. And we decided Santa Claus moving forward is no more toys. It's not, they're not going to get any of that.
Mm-hmm.
What they're going to get is they're going to get one thing, maybe a soccer kit or something like that, but they're going to get a plane ticket. And ever since then, like Christmas morning, we wake up and kids, even at their ages now, they have no idea where we're going. And we go to the airport that day and we're off for 2 to 3 weeks. But we're at the point where we can, when we travel, because of our jobs, we can disconnect.
Mm-hmm.
So when we do go, we embed. We Costa Rica, we did Barcelona a couple of years ago, and we've been all over the place. And our kids have learned that it's not about the stuff. It's literally about the travel. It's about the engage. It's about embedding. It's about meeting and through the loss. That's the greatest lesson I think that we've ever taught our kids, and not because we chose it. We would never want that, but that's what they got. And through travel, like, they're super mature and they're super like, my 10-year-old's about to turn 11, and my wife was busting his chops like, you got to fill out your Amazon wish list because grandma's blowing me up and your aunt's blowing me up. And he's like, can I just have cash because I want to buy stock? So it's like,
oh wow.
Yeah, that's
awesome.
He's a little unique.
Yeah,
but anyway, it's just one of those things. I watch people when we travel. And a couple of years ago, we were in Costa Rica, and there was a family of 5. I'll never forget this. And we're at the base of this volcano, and it's super tropical and awesome. And all 5 of these fuckers are on their phones, and they're not
so sad.
I'm like, at least take pictures.
Yeah.
You're on TikTok.
Yeah.
It's like, oh,
a volcano. There's an active volcano in front of you.
Yeah. Like,
just pay attention.
Go get in the mud. It's cool.
Yeah.
It's fun.
Oh, one thing, talking about judging other people. I have 3 kids.
That's my favorite pastime.
I have 3 kids. I have an 8-year-old, a 6-year-old, and a 3-year-old. When I go grocery shopping, I'll take all 3 of them with me usually. Mm. And I don't do any screens. I just make them part of the experience and everything. And I'm not saying, I judge. Whenever I see other families and they clearly have just handed their kid a tablet, I'm like, this is a whole thing though. Like, go, like, ask your kids, like, hey, we're about to get cereal. Look at the cereals, which, like, there's so many easy points for connection. Yeah. And I feel like a screen is basically an invitation to be like, I'm going to build whatever world I want, and I don't care about the world around me. So there are so many times where I'm like, just include your kid and you'll be fine. Like, you'll be okay. Just include your child in what you're doing. It might be inefficient and like it'll take longer, but you'll be okay.
Yeah, and I think my wife was really, really good about food in particular when it came to our boys. I too have 3. I have Keller. We were talking about him earlier. He's at Belmont, sophomore, so he just turned 19. I have a 15-year-old who's a sophomore in high school, and then I have a 10-year-old who's a 5th grader. So they're spread out a little bit.
That's a range.
Yeah.
Yeah, it was like me and my 2 brothers, because there was 3 of us. We were 13 months and 22 months. So I think that's why my mom wanted us out of the house, because it's like, holy fuck. I got all 3 of you so close, wrecked her head.
Yeah, especially all three boys.
Yes.
Oh my, yeah. Karma came my way, but but the food thing is like when you empower them in a grocery store, it has so many like fringe benefits.
Yep.
You know, because she would give them guidelines. You know, they're not getting the Cocoa Puffs.
No.
You could choose your cereal, but if it has high fructose anything, you can't have that box.
Yeah.
Or whatever it was. You know, so they would do that. Games, you know, in the fruits and veggie aisle. It's, you know, hey, it's a rainbow. Pick colors. Who can get the most colors? You know, and to this day, with that and with the travel, my kids can go anywhere. And if they stay with a friend, or, you know, the first time they hang out at a sleepover or they meet new people, like they eat everything. It was sushi, poke bowls, steak. It don't matter.
That's awesome.
You know, because they're used to it. You know, it was never a debate. We never like, you know, we never heard them clamor for the hot dog or the chicken nuggets and cry because, you know, I want my, you know, whatever brown fried thing is, because we empowered them in the decision-making process.
Yeah.
Early. And they've never looked back. So it's one of those wins, you know, as parents and especially as dads too, because while my wife led the charge, when I go out to eat with my kids, with other dads and their kids are eating shit.
Yeah.
They look at, you know, my 10-year-old on this last trip, literally we were, you know, there's four couples, I think, chicken fingers. And he's like, can I have the chicken Caesar, please?
Yeah.
And they're like, who's this weird kid? Like, what?
Yeah.
So,
he wants to eat a vegetable?
Yeah, it's so weird. I mean, obviously food, we all eat it every single day, but I don't think parents realize how important culturally, forget about the nutritional benefits, the cultural value of teaching them to eat proper and not be picky little shits is huge.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's why, I mean, having, and Devin's wife is really into this as well, but having a vegetable garden or herb garden at the house, being able to teach them those life
lessons. I don't want any lice lessons, Justin.
No lice, but life lessons on just the plants and the ecology and everything like that. It's so great, and learning about the nutrition of those foods as well.
Yeah, it's
I
cool.
think every home should have something like that.
How's your garden going, Justin? I feel like you've been pretty tired with the whole trying to sell your house and having a second kid pretty soon. Did you even do a garden this year?
No. I mean, we have the herb garden from the first that's along the driveway, but I got rid of the ones in the back.
Okay.
I just turned that into a patio. I'm sure that I was trying to make it a blank slate because we just moved, or we're going to move. We just sold the house. We're moving down south to Murfreesboro. So
it's we've gone through those cycles. We've had the raised beds, we've had the designated areas, you know, and it's just good food / healthy food. It's just so easy to have delivered anymore, you know, and it's cleaned and packaged. You know, between Trader Joe's and, you know, hopefully, et cetera, they all deliver now. And Aldi's is brilliant. It's got everything.
Yep.
We were like, well, you know, that's a lot of time. I would rather spend time in the kitchen than weeding. You know, it's like, let the farmers weed. Yes. There's other things I can do.
I find joy in that.
Garlic is the one where I'm like, my wife will always be like, oh, we'll plant some garlic this year. And I'm like, it takes like so long to grow. It's just this little bulb. It's like $1 at Kroger. I'm just going to go there. You're good.
Dude, you just haven't grown the right garlic.
Well, I know. Your garlic was massive.
Oh, man. And it was good, too.
Yeah. You had like elephant garlic. It was massive.
Yeah. And it was real easy to grow.
Well, you just leave it. I'm just impatient. I'm just saying it's not that it's hard to grow things. It's that I'm an impatient person and I'd rather spend $2.
Gotcha. See, you guys like soccer.
Yes.
I like plants. That's my whole stick.
That's fair.
Well, soccer's played on grass. So there's that. I mean, there's common. No, it's, I mean, soccer, it literally is probably 90% of our life up here. Just with the boys and the teams they play on, and the pod it was purely intended to be a scapegoat, something that could get me and my two buddies justifiably not in trouble while we drink as the kids train, or so. And it's just blown up because St. Louis is it's a soccer mecca. I mean, we call it what it is. And it's just blown up. We did it for fun. We did it to kill time. Me and one of my co-hosts in particular, we both played at the collegiate level, and he played a little semi-pro. I played post-college in a lot of competitive leagues in Chicago, et cetera. And the Rolodex here is just loaded with, ex-national team players and pros, and they're everywhere. They walk among us. So without trying, next thing we knew, we're at like 50 episodes. And it's like, well, Jesus Christ, that went fast. And, now we're at 170 plus.
That's pretty cool, man.
And it's just, the names keep coming in, the numbers are up. And I think it's one of those things, because much like this conversation, we don't get in the weeds. There's so many soccer podcasts now because everybody wants to be an MLS homer, and they want to get in the weeds and talk about XG and second string left backs, and I'm just like, oh my God, just shoot me now.
But do you enjoy the game? Like, sure, do we have depth at left back? We don't. But do you enjoy watching the game at all? Is it fun? Do you enjoy any of this anymore?
Yeah, no, and I think we joke about the sniff test, the eyeball test. Like, the few times that we might get into analysis, it's so like locker room bullshit talk.
Yeah,
because we're just like, look, okay, so we lose 3-2. Why? Well, they score 3, we score 2.
You John Madden it.
Yeah, I mean, this is not a complicated math equation.
Amazing.
Here. And and it's funny, and our listeners, because what we realized, we latched on to where we started to resonate was helping parents understand the process, understand the landscape. Because we do have kids that are playing at the highest MLS Next Academy levels. They're on pro paths. As long as they keep doing what they're going to do, at a minimum, they're going to be playing at really high level Division I programs. And then we've ran the gamut from the U5, U6, where the kids are just running around pulling weeds, and it's funny because we like, okay, at some point we all parents just need to quit projecting. You are not your child. They are not you. We joke on the show about how, like, one of the biggest detriments, or the mind fucks for parents, is like when you look at the kits and you look at the jerseys, it's always the last name on the back of the kit. And we joke and we're like, they should just put the first name on the front, like eliminate Anderson, because now dad is like, oh, that's my kid, Well, no shit, we know that. Yeah, it should be Stevie in the front. Oh, I like Stevie. He's a cool little kid.
Yeah.
And so going through that, and what's been most fun is some of the really high level guests that we've had that have had tremendous success. Brad Davis, an MLS all-star of all time. Mike Sorber and Steve Tritschu, and the list goes on and on and on.
I mean, Alexi Lawless, man. I was got to say, you had Alexi Lawless on your podcast.
We had Tab Ramos on.
Yeah.
It's like when you talk to guys like that, I don't care about what they think about the state of game today.
Yeah.
It's like, what made you different? Because at some point you knew you were different, or your parents knew you were different, or your coaches knew you were different. What were you doing differently? What was it? Just you hated to lose? Was it, were you really good about sleep and diet, and have fun with it? Because all of those guys, they could dribble and they could pass and they can shoot and they could do all the physical things that were required to be good at the game. But there are millions of kids all around the world that can do those things. Well, why is it only 1% hit that level? Well, it's mental. So, and so we try to figure out, okay, what was the mental advantage? How early did it kick in? And, when did you notice it? And then once you realized it, how did you harness it? Because some of these guys, they had careers that were 20 years as a pro.
Yeah.
We've got like Tim Ream will be coming our way here in the offseason.
Seriously?
He's a good St. Louis boy.
That's exciting.
Yeah, I mean, look at the last U.S. national team roster.
Yep.
You have 3 kids that all came from the club that my kids play at.
That's cool.
Patrick Schulte, Tim Ream, and Josh Sargent. So not only are they from St. Louis, but they played at the same goddamn club.
Yeah,
they have the same coaches.
What makes St. Louis like the Mecca?
I'm glad you asked that. I've thought of it.
Let's talk about SLU and Billikens also while we're here,
Well, you know what? It's all of that.
Yes.
Again, I said we've got 170 episodes under our belt. We've talked to all of them. St. Louis is, you got to look at the geography first. I mean, this is really a cultural lesson as it applies to the soccer side. It's a confluent city. You have the Missouri, you have the Mississippi River that both cross right here. You had the first bridge that carried trains went across right here. It was the largest city west of the Mississippi for the longest time. You had the World's Fair in 1904. And then when you think about the city and what happens when you have all that stuff, infrastructure, what you get is immigrants. We have huge pockets of immigrant neighborhoods, from Germans to Italians on the hill, et cetera. Well, when they come over here, and again, the greatest company ever out of St. Louis is Anheuser-Busch, Budweiser, beer, Germans, right?
Yep.
So all the individuals that were working in the coal mines were Italians, and all the Germans were working at the brewery. Well, what did they do in the free time? Well, they only knew one sport. It wasn't baseball.
Yep.
Even though we got pretty good at baseball too, but it was soccer. So then you look at 1950 World Cup and the infamously famous 1-0 win of the United States over England.
Yeah.
Of the 11 starters, 6 were from St. Louis. And not only were they from St. Louis, they lived within 10 blocks of one another.
That's cool.
They're all from the hill.
Yeah.
And then that generation spurred this, who's going to be the coaches of the next CYC youth leagues and who's coaching at, Flow Valley. And ultimately, to your point, Devin, SLU University.
Yep.
SLU was the benefactor of that early wave of success. And to this day, SLU has the most national titles in Division I history.
Yep.
And it's never stopped. Soccer is part of our culture. We're going on the 4th generation of players. Last year, the U.S. national team had a kind of an awards ceremony here in St. Louis at one of the home games for City SC. And it invited all of the living members that could make it that had capped for the national team that were from St. Louis.
That's cool.
It was like 47 dudes.
That's cool.
Wow.
We have the highest percentage of any city in the country of national team players by a landslide. Jersey's number 2 because of the Tony Meola days and the John Harks and all of those guys.
Yeah.
And it's just never slowed down. And when we look at today's national team, when we look at the international pros that are playing everywhere, I mean, St. Louis players just dot the map.
Yeah.
And
Nashville has at least 2, just so you know, Justin.
Joey Mayer.
Yep.
Really?
Jack.
Yeah, and Joe Willis. Yep.
Yeah.
Oh, Joe Willis. Okay.
Yep.
Yeah,
Yep.
you should tell him you're talking to a St. Louis guy, No, here's a crazy story about Mayer.
Yeah. Indiana graduate, by the way, just as an IU fan. Yep.
Okay, so the Mayer family. You talk about something crazy in the water.
Yeah.
Jim is the dad. We had him on our show because I knew the story of all his kids, and I'm like, holy shit, how is this freaking possible?
Yeah.
He had 4 boys. The oldest boy had a physical issue at a young age that did not allow him to be an athlete, but he was the first one to go to Indiana University, graduated as an attorney, and he's super successful. Then you have Nashville Joe or Jack, because they're all J's.
Yeah.
Jack was number 2, goes to Indiana, All-American. He's drafted, 4th in MLS, and now he's your anchor.
Yep.
Then you go to the third is it doesn't matter. J number 3. He too went J3 went to Indiana for 4 years, had a 5th year of eligibility, is now at SLU, but was drafted by Vancouver, came back playing at SLU, and is going to go back to MLS after this next year. But the baby is in the system, who is now who's at Indiana, and he's arguably the best of all 3 that played.
That's crazy.
Wow.
These are 3 dudes these brothers will absolutely play in MLS at the same time.
Yeah.
And it's one family.
That's
who
cool.
all came from Scott Gallagher, same club.
Yep. Well, I mean, that's almost like in Indiana, the Zeller brothers or the Plumlee brothers for basketball, in which the Zeller brothers were all 7 foot by the time they were freshmen in college, and went to Notre Dame, Duke, and IU. Those are that's pretty insane. So it's cool whenever you see a family lineage of all
horrible schools, by the way, basketball schools.
Yeah, that's right.
IU is we joke here in St. Louis because IU is like SLU East.
They farm out all the St. Louis kids to come to IU. I'm not going to act like that's not what happens.
Yeah, no. So Jerry Yeagley. So back in high school, I went to Granite City High School, as I mentioned earlier. Well, Granite City at the time, our high school tournament was called Tournament Champions. It was the number 1 high school soccer tournament in the nation for years. But it was because you would have all the high-powered St. Louis high school teams there. There were all the private schools, the SLU High and the CBCs and all those schools. And then the crazy thing was the amount of scouts, the college scouts that would come to this tournament. I mean, it was a flood, hundreds of them. Jerry Yeagley was friends with my high school coach early on, so he was an early attendee. And he would come there, and it was a pipeline of St. Louis players that would go to IU. And, a lot of those, the early national championships, probably 25% of the team was comprised of St. Louis players. And to this day, this past, just a couple weeks ago was the season opener, SLU versus IU at SLU. There was 7,000 people there. And we did a live episode there, and the number of national team cap alum from both sides that were walking around there, it's just not normal. We were talking to Dan Donegan, who used to coach there, and he's a big Jersey guy, but he's the one that recruited Tim Ream and coached during those years, and he was sitting there with us, and he's like, this is just not normal. He goes, I've been all over the world, specifically United States in soccer communities. He goes, I have never seen this amount of pro alum in any gathering anywhere. Yeah. And it's cool. That's our, we have Ted Drew's, Emo's Pizza, and soccer.
And maybe some ribs in there too,
Yeah, I mean, as long as they're sloppy and fall off the bone, as long as it's not Kansas City ribs.
That's right, man.
Because that shit's dog.
All right, I have to hit you with one question, because I do know St. Louis is a massive soccer mecca, as we've already discussed. Why do you think it took so long for you guys to get an MLS team? Because my dad and I've discussed for years, how is it, how did Nashville get an MLS team before St. Louis did?
It's politics and money. St. Louis, I mean, you guys see the headlines. You talk about national crime, right? There's 2 cities, St. Louis and Baltimore. Well, structurally speaking, we have the same problem Baltimore does. St. Louis City is isolated and is not included as part of St. Louis County. Nashville, what was it, about 10 years ago? Nashville proper, the city incorporated into Davidson County.
Yeah. And
soon after, Nashville MLS comes down the pipe. Yep. So the other problem here in St. Louis is we have this turd by the name of Stan Kroenke. This is the most St. Louis thing you can possibly do, is despise Stan Kroenke. Who doesn't hate Stan Kroenke? I mean, even people in LA are like, who is this Walmart hillbilly?
Justin, have you ever talked to a St. Louis person about Stan Kroenke before?
No, I haven't.
Okay,
So
Stan Kroenke more or less moved the Rams from there to LA. He also owns.
He didn't move them. He stole them.
That's
from
true.
Underneath
he
the
owns
city.
the Avalanche, the Nuggets, the Rapids. He owns like 4
Arsenal?
franchises. Yeah, Arsenal. He has Walmart money. He just bought. He looks around and is like, "I'll take that one."
It's not even his. He married.
It's
into
not.
it.
It's his wife.
he was that poser. Like he has dirt to the level that most people like can't even imagine.
I think an MLB team is the only major sports franchise he doesn't own in America. Everything else he has at least one.
Yeah, he's got the rest.
Yep.
And
anyway,
that was a big part of it.
Yeah.
Because the franchise values were skyrocketing, especially once you get to 2008, 2010, you're starting to see some real numbers start to clip up. I mean, our current ownership group, which, I couldn't be more impressed by, knowing a lot of the other groups. Because when I was living in Chicago back in the day, as we were talking about earlier, I was season 1 through 3 season ticket holder for the Fire.
Yeah.
So I was there for those early years at Soldier Field, and it was cool. It felt right. And that's when Anschutz Group and Kroenke and the rest of them were involved. But here in St. Louis now, we have an ownership group that is, you got two companies. You have two families. You have Enterprise Rent-A-Car with the Taylors, which is a privately held company. And then you have Worldwide Tech with Jim Cavanaugh, which is also a privately held company. Their estimated combined value net worth is close to $40 billion.
Good God.
So when you look at, and Jim Cavanaugh was a soccer guy, played at SLU.
Was he? Okay.
Yeah, he was an MISL indoor guy and, went to SLU University prior. And so soccer's in his blood. So when you take those two companies and they don't lose, they don't get to be the size they are without being really, really good at what they do. And they're implementing that, that kind of mantra and mindset into our team. And, last year we had a fairy tale first year. Second year's been hard.
Yep.
But the stadium, I don't know if you've had a chance to make it up. Probably not.
No, not yet. Yeah.
I've been to a lot of MLS stadiums. This one, and I'm going to be a homer and a realist. It is off the charts.
Yeah.
I mean, it feels European.
That's cool.
So it has that, and give it time, because we've already proven that we can develop players. We name dropped them just a little while ago. Give us a little bit of time, and when those players aren't going elsewhere and they're funneling into our home team, it's going to be lights out. We're going to do what the Cardinals did in the 50s and 60s, and we're back, baby. It's cool. Coming.
What's the vibe at a game like? Because in Nashville, they had to bring a soccer culture to Nashville where that didn't exist as much before. Geodis is a fun place to go see a game. They've made it very interactive and really fun. Lately, the season's not going so well for Nashville. It's easier to cheer for a team whenever they're doing well.
Yeah.
But what's like the environment? What's the atmosphere like whenever you go to a game in St. Louis?
Well, it's really amazing. A lot of it has to do with combination of factors. The stadium, as I just referenced, it's built into the environment. So when you walk into the stadium, the field is like 40 feet below plane. So it's in a pit, which makes it loud.
Yeah.
And the supporter section is very, very steep, and it's right on top of the the north goal. The acoustics, the music, the vibe, the lights, the color, the way they put on the production is top notch. The fandom is funny because we are not a new soccer city. We're not like Nashville, right?
Nope.
A lot of people in Nashville are learning it. They're trying to figure it out, and it's more of a kind of,
we'll go to a game.
Yeah, we'll experience soccer. Yeah. What's that like? Why are they tying? I don't understand.
Totally me.
Yeah, but here it's like you have a very, very educated fan base.
Yeah.
So when things are good, things are great. But when things falter, it's not just a fandom that's upset about losing or, why do we blow that game? Or like they're a little bit more in tune with, hey, we got no grit. Our spine is bad. Our 10 is awful. All that shit I said I hated earlier as far as the weeds the weeds are baked into our thought process and how we view the game. So it's funny. It's one of those things we are so overdue to get the team and be part of the show after feeding the league players forever. So it when it turns, when we ride it, when we get the right chemistry laid out, it's going to be a top 4 city in the league, in my opinion. Just kind of knowing what I know and kind of, reading the tea leaves a little bit. It's kind of hard for it not, because look at Chicago. Chicago's been an early in, right? They were one of the first 8 teams. They still haven't figured it out.
Nope.
They've been at it for a long time, and there's a huge soccer culture up there, but it just feels like it's wrong more than it's right. We won't make that mistake.
Yeah.
So yeah, Nashville though. I'm sending my kid to the game, I think next weekend.
Okay. Yeah.
It's Nashville's going to be. It's a weird city for me from a soccer perspective. Because the club scene, there's not a lot of, yes, you have a lot of youth clubs there, but the youth clubs there are not really, they haven't clipped at a high level, within the region, et cetera.
Yeah.
But the college scene, Lipscomb just came up to SLU the other night and tied 2-2. So, and then you got Belmont and
Lipscomb also had in the last MLS draft 2 first-round draft picks, right?
Yep.
Yeah. So it's I think growing up in the Midwest, soccer was much more of a given to do, where the South is clearly more football related. So now you're having more kids look up and be like, oh, the soccer team thing's fun, and I don't get as many concussions. Maybe I should play this instead.
Well, I tell you, here's the thing. I mean, you guys are both dads, right?
Yep.
If you really want to understand how big the game is now and how it's inevitable that it's going to gain more market traction, just go to your kid's school. Look at what the kids are wearing. They're not wearing, like here in St. Louis. I mean, we are Cardinal Nation, right?
Yeah.
You go to any grade school, any middle school or high school, anywhere in the area, you're going to see about a 20-to-1 ratio of soccer kids, whether it's City or Chelsea or Liverpool or whatever it is, to a Cardinal kid. Yep. And this isn't parents feeding it. This is the kids demanding it. So with the popularity of the Ronaldos and Messis, et cetera, and Yamin Lamal and all the new players on Insta, those are their new idols. And I think commensurate with that is going to be more and more kids getting into soccer, more than they already are, because more kids play youth soccer, than youth baseball in America today. So, so it's just going to keep growing. So it's up to the league to pay them more. get that
That's
right.
True.
And our global footing will improve.
Yeah.
So yeah, I love it. It's
That's
one
cool.
of those games, man. I've traveled all over the world, and I've been privileged to go to games. I've been to Stamford Bridge, and I've been to QPR, and when you go in and you really feel the culture in places like that.
Yep.
And then you come home and go to a city park or a geodisc, right? You're like, this is cool, but it's not the same.
Yeah.
And we'll get there, but it's going to take time.
Nope. And I think it is really cool. I think the community you find through people who also enjoy soccer a lot seems like one of those niche things where it's almost like you're like, hey, do you really like this band? And someone's like, oh, this is my favorite band of all time. And then you're like, cool, we're ride or die for the rest of our lives now. So
that's the way I am with anybody that has even heard of Uncle Tupelo. I'm like, oh my God.
You are so Southern Illinois right now. So
I don't talk about Woco. I don't talk about Sunvolt. I talk about Uncle Tupelo.
Uncle Tupelo. Okay.
That's pre-divorce.
That is fantastic. Oh, Justin, that's a really weird, deep cut, late 90s, early 2000s, Southern Illinois alt country scene just for you. So
there you go.
I got you. I'm following you.
You'll love it.
Anyway, I'll start wrapping up the episode. How we end every episode is we ask every guest the same 5 questions, and Justin will ask the first question.
Yeah. So you have 3 boys. Did you have backup names for them?
No, on
Okay.
all three we did not, and the reason is, my wife's oven is a rapid cook oven, and they all came so fast. Like, they were 5 weeks early, like almost all. So we were surprised each time.
Okay.
One name we knew, no backup name. First one. The other two were literally sitting in the delivery room, like, holy shit, we got to come up with something. So it was very, very, very fast. So no, there were on all three, no backup names.
That is. Did you find out the gender before the birth, or did you wait until delivery?
One time, on number 2. So first one was a surprise. And the names. Well, my wife and I were in Hawaii. True story. Eating cheeseburgers. I was drinking beer. She was pregnant, so she was like cussing me. And we were like, "Oh, well, let's have fun. I'll write down the boy name. You write down the girl name, and we don't know what the sex is." And we folded up the napkins, and that's how we first one. So there was no backup. Second one we knew as a boy, but because it came so fast, and we were pros by number 2, right?
Yeah,
so
we
didn't talk about names early. Did that one in the hospital, and then the third one, we didn't know the sex, and it was the funniest thing because as soon as he came out and we saw the little wiener, my wife was like, "Hell yes," because she did not want a girl at that point.
No, I mean, like, I have 2 girls and a son, and like, you look up and you're like, oh, I have to relearn some really weird things. Like, okay, I have to change diapers differently. All the clothes I thought I could use, I can't use. Like, all right, that's fine. That's good. I'm happy.
All right. Question 2.
Who's your favorite TV dad?
Well, my pre-cancel answer was Bill Cosby.
Yep.
But post cancel, oh man, I don't know on that one, to be honest.
Well, I mean, Bill Cosby as a fictional dad character is Phil Huxley. He's a great TV dad. Just ignore every other aspect.
He was great in the parts. I think what was the Modern Family?
Yeah, Phil Dunphy.
I kind of relate to him because it's like he's the gullible idiot on purpose. Because the more he screwed up, then the less she expected him to do. And I'm like, that's brilliant.
That's relatable.
All right.
That's awesome.
That's hilarious. All right. Do you have a least favorite kids show that just drives you insane?
All of them. What was the one? Blue's Clues was a no-go.
Okay. Yeah.
The other one was Bubble Guppies.
Bubble Guppies. Oof. Yeah, that one's weird.
Oh my god, it was the song. It was the theme song.
Sounds
like, oh my god.
Weird.
It was just
when did that come
awful.
out?
I think it's still on.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. It's like Nickelodeon little kid mermaids and like stuff floating around.
Gotcha.
Yeah. Now on the flip side, Dino Train, that's a hammer show. That's a good one. You can sit there and you eat your popcorn and watch with them. Not too bad.
And enjoy it. Next question: favorite kids' toy or activity? Don't say soccer. Like whenever your kids do it, you also enjoy like playing with the toy or doing the activity with them.
We were big game family. They got into cards early, so whether it was blackjack or even just straight poker or whatever, it was. The reason why it was fun is because they too hate to lose, so the violence factor escalated quickly, which was kind of entertaining, So any cards,
any card game, cool,
awesome. All right, and this could go for all 3 of your boys or just one in particular. But what is a moment in your kid's life you're most excited part of?
The quick answer is really all of it. I'm super lucky that my kids are extremely well balanced, and they thrive. They thrive in what they where their passions lie. My oldest with music, I mean, he was playing music at 4. We figured out he had perfect pitch like at 8.
That's cool.
And he had no fear as a kid walking up on stage and playing in front of his school or, a concert anywhere. I mean, so the pride in watching a little one go up and rip off rip out, She's Always a Woman, on piano and nail it. You're like, okay, that's pretty cool. And then my middle son is soccer, it's in his blood. And so when, playing at the academy level and going into the facilities in the environment and playing against literally the nation's best in the age group, it's, and holding zone and just being a really good teammate, because he's kind of a leader in that world. There's a lot of pride there. And then with the third one, it's honestly, we were joking earlier about how he just wants money for stock. During COVID, like I'm still a money guy, and I watch Squawk Box every morning early, and he would get up early and come down and eat a cereal with me and have no clue what he's watching. And about 2.5 years ago, he's like, "Hey, Dad, do I have any money in this stock market thing?" And I'm like, "Yeah, you got a little bit. You want to have some fun?" And I let him pick, and he's like, "Well, I think Facebook is good." And I'm like, "Well, that's Meta." And he had a little bit of money in his birthday money and bought 2 shares at $2.40 a piece. And today it closed at $5.58. Yeah. So nice. The little dude knows what he's doing. So that's a whole different kind of pride.
That's fun. Yeah.
That's a very long answer, but I had 3 kids,
Yeah.
So
no, you see them start to get an interest, and they I think whenever you can see like the light click on in someone's head, that's your kid. Then you're just like, oh man, this is awesome. So last thing to close out on, we always want to make sure to give every guest an opportunity to do some self-promotion. So if we want to follow the podcast, follow you on Instagram, anything like that, do some self-promotion, where can we find you? All that good stuff. Yeah,
it's super easy. It's Soccer Dad Pod is really where I would say my best work is. It's really easy to find the Soccer Dad Pod, Insta, Facebook, Twitter, all of it. If you go on Twitter and find us, I'm the one that's trolling all the Kansas City soccer people. I have a lot of haters.
That is fantastic.
So but it's legitimately for parents that are in the sporting world or have kids coming into it. Soccer in particular, but really any sport, so many of our guests just nail that process. And, the things to really care about or the things to really ignore, because everybody thinks their kid is great and going to be the next, Pele or whatever the sport is, right? And the reality is the 99.9% of them are not. It's a very small percent that are there. And the show kind of walks people off the ledge while we drink beer and have fun, just like this.
Exactly.
So, Soccer Dad Pod, check it out.
Respect. Well, JB, dude, thanks so much for hanging out with us for a bit. And
yeah, man.
Cool.
Thanks so much for spending the night with us, man. We really appreciate it.
All right, I'm gonna get out of here because I have a kid that just pinged me saying practice is over, Dad.
That is the most dad reason to have to leave a dad podcast possible, man.
Like if this was video, I would show you this screenshot.
Awesome.
Like, no, I just got called out. So
just got called out. You got to hurry up, man. So go pick up your kid, and we'll talk to you another time. All right, man.
Devin, Justin, thank you for the time.
Appreciate it. Thank you, JB.
Bye-bye.
Thanks so much for listening. Please make sure to follow us on Instagram and Facebook at the Nashville Dads. And make sure to follow us on anywhere you find your podcast, and please give us a 5-star rating. And thank you to Matt Oakes for providing the music for the episode. Catch you next time.